Biden and his Vice President Kamala.
Are you ready? Yes, it's time to make our dreams come true. No more negativity in our way. No more negativity. No more negativity. Hey, Joe and Kamala, are you ready to go? Oh, Kamala and Joe, are you ready to go to the White House? And I know you got your work cut out, ain't no doubt. It shouldn't be this bad. This nation is divided, so let's put it all together and make things better. Put it together, make things better and better and better and better for everybody. Better for everybody.
Welcome to the Chicago Communicated News Media Talk Show. This is a remote broadcast, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the show. How are you?
Fine.
Okay. We're going to be having State Senator L.G. Sims on today. The Illinois Senate passed a measure that would impose comprehensive criminal justice reform on how police are held accountable for the use of force, how courts impose bails and sentence convicts. I think we just had the state senator coming on. Good evening, State Senator L.G. Sims. How are you?
Good evening, Ms. Carter. How are you? How's everybody doing this
fine.
evening?
Oh, fine. We have folks waiting to talk with you. We want to cover the police reform bill, and I was just reading to them about your criminal justice reform. And so maybe now you can tell us in your own words what we need to know about that. And welcome to the show.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. House Bill 3653 it was a culmination of 9 public hearings, over 30 hours of testimony of the Joint Senate Criminal Law, Public Safety, and House Judiciary Criminal Committee. It is one of the most comprehensive pro-safety, pro-reform, pro-community bills ever passed here in the state of Illinois or anywhere in the United States of America.
Wow.
It addresses a number of issues. It makes significant reforms in the areas of police training and everything from crisis intervention tactics to de-escalation, police accountability, transparency in law enforcement, and the rights of detainees and prisoners. So it really is a very forward-thinking piece of legislation. It does everything from modernizing sentencing laws to ending cash bail, instituting a certification and decertification system for law enforcement officers, requiring the use of body cameras statewide,
wow, that's gonna be
crowd control, amplifying law enforcement training standards, preventing the destruction of police law enforcement misconduct records, connecting abuse treatment and programs with first responder duties, making sure that police collective bargaining agreements don't supersede state statute. So it really is a very forward-thinking piece of legislation. It also creates a police misconduct database for public viewing and for law enforcement use. Empowers the state's attorney general to investigate deaths occurring in police custody.
Oh, that's
officer wellness and mental health training. Bans the use of chokeholds, and establishes statewide use of force standards by 2022. So when I say that this is the most comprehensive bill for police accountability, criminal justice reform, and violence reduction that the state of Illinois has ever passed and has ever passed in the country, I mean that because it covers so many different areas.
Whoa, it sure does. It sounds so comprehensive. I mean, Thomas, I know you have a question for the senator. Please.
Yes. Hey, LG. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Thomas. Thanks for having me.
And I have to say how this is truly a blessing to be able to come around, to be able to get back, for us to be able to do this.
Yeah.
I am so happy about this bill. I was reading today about with this bill, it allows the correctional departments to contact families. I had no idea that if someone got sick in jail, that they could die and they not contact the families.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, imagine that. Imagine that your loved one is in police custody and they die, and you have no information. And that's and back to Miss Carter's earlier question about the process. That's how this came about. This just, there's this narrative being trying to be created that this came out of nowhere. And
Yeah.
that's why I always remind people that this bill came about after 9 public hearings.
9.
So 9 public hearings that were posted on the state's website. Individuals, including law enforcement, had the opportunity to testify. We had advocates. We had individuals who came and they testified on all parts of this bill. But from the time of that first hearing, so September 1st was the very first hearing of those joint committees that I talked about.
Okay.
This bill was introduced on January 5th. The first version of this bill was introduced January 5th. That's 126 days.
Okay.
So 4 months and 4 days. So that for somebody to say that this bill came out of nowhere is just not true. And then there's a narrative created that, or tried to be created, that this was passed, just in the dead of night. Well, first I will remind people that this bill was originally supposed to be passed during the veto session, but the veto session was canceled, so we had to carry it over into the end of the 101st General Assembly, which was those last couple of days, or called lame duck session. But what this bill also was a result of countless conversations with individuals in the community who say it is long past time that these reforms be put into place. And those happened with communities who said we are being over policed, we are being over incarcerated, and we feel under siege. And we want the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus to do something to assist us. And that's how we came about. That's how House Bill 3653 came about, from those conversations and from the cries of our community and communities who were saying we want action. And that's how this came about.
Absolutely.
Annie Tate shows us why some lawmakers say it's amending the process and making sure the criminal justice system works for everyone.
We want to go from protest to progress. From protest to progress.
Some Illinois lawmakers pushing for reforms and changes to the law enforcement system through House Bill 163 on Sunday.
I don't say the comments that I do to demonize nor vilify law enforcement. This is about ensuring that we have a criminal justice system that works for everyone.
Amendment 2 would eliminate qualified immunity for officers and end cash bail, and unfunded mandates for better police training.
This is about rooting out bad policing and racist policing.
The discussion is raising concerns from some law enforcement who say the process is rushed, but Senator L.G. Sims says there has been about 30 hours of discussion over the course of 9 hearings.
So the narrative that this is rushed, that they have not had time to see these proposals is not true.
I submitted a question about concerns from the Tazewell County Sheriff, who says he's worried police officers will quit if qualified immunity, which protects officers from civil lawsuits, is eliminated.
I think that is a distraction, and I think that is fear-mongering.
Caucus Chair and Senate Majority Leader Kimberly A. Lightford believes now is the time to take action.
And for all the Black mothers out there who, like me, have far too often feared for our children's lives.
In Peoria, Annie Kate, WMBD News.
TJ, talk to our senator.
Hello, State Senator Sims.
Daniels, how are you, sir?
I'm quite well. How are you?
Good.
How do you? I have the question that I have today is, how do you feel that your committee assignments in this General Assembly will aid you in making sure that your bill is very effective and will be upheld to the fullest of its potential? Because I know that a lot of the times we people pass things with good intent, but then people look over them because they're not being enforced.
Well, TJ, that's a great question, and so I'm even though the fact I am leaving as chairman of the Senate's Criminal Law Committee, I'm still remaining as vice chairman of that committee. But but furthermore, while I am moving from chairman of Criminal Law Committee, I am moving to chairman of the Senate's Appropriation Committee. And so when you start talking about the how things will be implemented, the implementation comes from the execution of the budget, and that's how we will ensure that this bill is effectively implemented, by making sure that the resources are there to support the outline of items that we have included in this bill, so that folks can't say, well, we can't do it because the money's not there. Well, no, that's not going to be the case, because we're going to be making sure that the investments are made in these areas, because this is again something that my community and my constituents and the constituents of all of us, whether you are represented by a member of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus or not, if you are a citizen of the state of Illinois, you have a vested interest in our public safety system being better. And House Bill 3653 allows for us to reimagine what public safety looks like, and that's what we will do. So my committee assignments, while I'm not going to be chair of criminal law anymore, that doesn't mean I'm going to go anywhere, because I continue to be invested in these issues. They are this is a passion of mine, because I want to see my community, I want to see every community receive the same quality of level of justice as anybody else. Your access to justice should not be dictated by your zip code, the color of your skin, or the size of your bank account. And that's what we're working towards.
We need more of you, Senator. We need more of you. Yes, sir.
So,
Thank you.
LG.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to make sure that we talk about I want to talk about this a little bit more in depth, but I do want you to also talk about some of the other pillars that the Black Caucus submitted this year into legislation.
What about
Absolutely.
Before he jumped to that,
yeah,
let's stick a little bit on this police bill. There's a thing called qualified immunity.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys going to be able to get that into law? And I know the police don't like the bill anyway.
Well, that's right. Well, and that's our focus on qualified immunity didn't end with the passage of House Bill 3653. What we did do was we included a task force to discuss issues related to qualified immunity and all constitutional rights, etc. So we'll have additional discussions. That task force includes experts in this field, because that was an area where folks were asking for. They were asking for additional time to have conversations related to qualified immunity, etc. So we created this task force that includes members of the State Bar Association, members of the Trial Lawyers Association, members of law enforcement, so we can have discussions about what qualified immunity is and what it is not, because I think that's a huge misconception of what there's a huge misconception of what qualified immunity is. So we're going to have some additional conversations about that throughout the session. That's why I'm looking forward to the governor signing this bill into law, so we can get that task force working, because that task force is supposed to have a report back by May 1, so that we can have, if we're going to have some legislative action before the end of this session, we can do that.
If I can do a follow-up to that, I can't understand, and I'm almost 70 years old, and I can't understand, if a doctor do something stupid, he could be sued.
Right.
If a teacher do something stupid, she can be sued.
right.
Almost every profession, if they do something stupid, they could be sued,
Right.
other than the police. For the life of me, I just don't comprehend that. And I've seen a lot of bad stuff in my close to 70-some years of life with the police.
Mr. Bell, what do you have to say about that?
I think this is a great step that the caucus undertook. And as working with the senator, I can tell you the pressure and that's coming from the local police force throughout the state.
Okay.
we have to give our brother Sims a lot of um, accommodation for the work that he's doing because in this environment of these Trump Trumpites out here, it's very dangerous for a brother to be pushing this type of bill on that.
I understand. Mr.
So
Pierce, what say you?
Yes, thank you so much again, Wanda, for hosting this event. Truly honored and humbled to have an opportunity to have a critical thought analysis related to this new crime bill that he introduced, and I think we should all give him an applause
Absolutely.
just for having the foresight and the forethought
Yes.
to introduce this bill at such a time. If I'm not mistaken, however, Governor Pritzker has not, at this point in time, signed off, although it has passed both the House and the Senate. What do you see as the timetable for this bill to be enacted? And I'd like to have a follow-up question after you respond to this one.
Absolutely, and thank you, Ms. Pearson, for the question. But let me say I am honored and humbled to be in your presence because it's the voices of people who like the people on this call who lift me up and have ordered my steps in the work that we are doing. So the bill, specifically to your question, the bill just got to the governor's desk, so he has 60 days to sign it from there. I have been in constant communication with the governor and the governor's office about the bill. I'm hoping that we have some really good developments here in the very near future relative to the bill. So I'm looking forward to being able to come back and say to you that the bill is going to be signed on X date. I don't have that information right now, but I am certainly looking forward to us being for the governor to sign that bill. I certainly expect him to sign that bill. Because he understands the damage that has been done to our community, to Black and other marginalized communities by a system that invests in over incarceration and mass incarceration, as opposed to addressing the root causes of violence and the underlying situations and circumstances. And I want to get to Thomas A's question in a second after Mr. Pearson's, or about the other pillars and how the other pillars play into the criminal justice reform after I get to Mr. Pearson's second follow-up question.
Thank you so much. And it actually leads directly into my second question. I've been working with State Representative LaShawn K. Ford for several years over at the Cook County Juvenile Temporary Detention Center. We know that 80% of the funding for that county facility is actually bequeathed from the state budget. At last research that was compiled, we spend approximately $238,000 per year per youth to detain them pre-adjudication, meaning that they have not been charged delinquent with anything, but we are not giving them $238,000 to go to a private school or to a public school of their choice. What are we, as the state, and I'm sorry, I do want to add this very important factor in, and we want to thank our Lieutenant Governor, Stratton, for this policy advocacy. There are 5 state IYCs, Illinois Youth Centers, being closed downstate Illinois as a cost-saving measure that the state saw that was needed. They've realized that detaining young people for long periods of time does not, in fact, reduce recidivism when we have in place, of course, a disproportionate minority contact, overpopulation, overrepresentation of Black youth in our detention facilities. What is it that we can do as community members to help support leadership such as yourself to reimagine community-based, not just policing, but youth mental health services, youth programming, after school, school care, opportunities and options to enter into STEM programs after school, I actually sit on the board of a travel program where we take young people to Africa once a year free of charge.
Oh, that's wonderful.
These types of programs are,
needed.
we're bleeding out of our personal bank accounts to help try to redirect our young people into culturally competent, community-based experiences. What does your bill, your crime bill, do in hopes of saving our future, our young people, those under the age of 18 who find themselves in precarious predicaments with the courts and the institutions that detain them?
And that's happening a lot.
That just, you know what, Ms. Pearson, that is, this ties directly into the question that Thomas Say was asking earlier. The House Bill 3653 and the criminal justice reform, police accountability, violence reduction pillar doesn't sit in a silo. That's why we had to have this four-pillar strategy that would address the challenges our communities face. So we could, yes, because there's no one bill that will cure everything that's wrong in communities.
Correct.
Right.
But
Correct.
so we have passed a bill that does one thing, yes. But if you're going to make a statement about the challenges affecting the Black community and other marginalized communities, we had to have a holistic approach and a holistic strategy for how we were going to address those challenges. So criminal justice was just one pillar, but then there is the education and workforce development pillar, because we know that our young people, when they are on or undereducated, it limits the ability and the height of their achievements in other areas.
Right.
Then there are, as we were talking about earlier, there's the healthcare pillar. If we don't address mental health and substance use and abuse challenges, then those individuals are never really made whole, and they cannot be full. They are limited by the challenges and the healthcare deserts that they exist in. Then there is also the economic opportunity pillar. When you are economically insecure, then you do not have the ability to provide for yourself or your family. So the failures and disinvestments in each one of those areas, economics. So when you have the fact that Black teens or Black young people between the ages of 16 and 24 have the highest rate of unemployment of any segment of the population. When that reality is true, there has to be something done about investing in that community and providing economic opportunities to that community, to that segment of the community. Then if you have individuals who have mental health challenges or have health deserts, and if COVID-19 didn't show us anything else, it shined a bright light on the disparities which exist in our healthcare system.
Yeah.
Correct.
And when those individuals do not have they don't have access to adequate services, what happens? They oftentimes end up in the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
And when we have an educational system that does not effectively invest in our young people, those young people typically end up in the school to prison pipeline. So the criminal justice system sits at the end of failures to invest in all those other areas. So that's why it was so important that we have that four-pillar strategy, so that individuals, as we have that investment in those other areas, then we have a criminal justice system that just does not. I had a conversation, and I tell this story often, about there was a woman in Cook County. She was pregnant, she had a mental health challenge, and she was poor. She was homeless. She went into a convenience store. She stole several pieces of fruit and a couple pieces of candy. The store owner caught her. One of these corner store owners who exist on the southwest side of the city of Chicago, east side of Springfield and Peoria. So y'all know what these corner stores I'm talking about. The store owner caught her, called the police. When the police got there, police knew it because this woman, she was somebody had seen walking around the neighborhood, because as I mentioned, she was homeless. The police offered, because the amount of the items stolen were, it was minuscule. The police offered to pay for the young lady's the young lady's transgression. The store owner said to her, "No, I want her locked up. She has to be taught a lesson."
Wow.
Okay, so they took her into custody. So she, as I mentioned, she was homeless. So if she was homeless, then clearly, no matter if the bail had been, if she was stealing a couple pieces of fruit and a couple pieces of candy, she did not have even $100 to bail herself out.
Right.
So let's start there. So she goes into Cook County Jail. As she goes into Cook County Jail, she does not bail herself out. Remember, I said she was pregnant. She had the baby in jail. So
What?
now
Wow.
she had the baby in jail. And
Yeah.
in addition
No
to
help?
she stayed in county jail for over 160 days, had the baby in jail. So in addition to the care that the Cook County taxpayers paid to house her for those 163 days, they had to pay for health care for the baby.
Right.
And then she still did not get the health care and the mental health services that she needed.
Yeah.
So so there was never any acknowledgement that this young lady had an underlying. I always say that in the criminal justice system or in any of these areas, we should be asking questions like a 3-year-old. Why? Yeah. Why did she come? How did she get here? Why did she come to pass? Why did these things come to pass?
Right.
So now
Right.
the Cook County taxpayer is on the hook for thousands of dollars when that young lady got to court, if the judge had merely said, not just giving her a money bond and sending her off to Cook County Jail, if they had directed her to treatment, if they had directed her to services, then that would have been a much better way to address the challenges that young lady faced. And frankly, by her sitting in jail for 160 days, our communities were no more safe. They were no more safe. So we have to think about these items in these areas differently.
You got 2 questions. One
yes,
from Miss Carolyn Jackson, and then following her, Miss Elizabeth Johnson. Carolyn.
Okay. It's an honor for me to be on here.
Honor's all mine.
I must admit, I'm a retired correctional officer. Anyone coming through the Cook County Jail, for me and our experience, they do talk to mental health and have a physical as soon as they come in through the intake. Now, there are very good equipped psychologists there. Now, our problem is not always inside the jail. The budget has cut most of the health care and mental health facilities in our communities. So they cannot, once they start their treatment and when they're released, they are given ample amount of medication. They talk to them and tell them where to go. Most of them, as you say, they cannot make it to the Cook County, Strozier Hospital for mental health because all of the ones is closed in the facility. And yes, that is something to think about. And the hardest part of that was by her being pregnant. And when she's being released, where is her child? Who took her baby while she was in custody? And how was she able to get the baby back once she was released?
Wow, that's interesting. Interesting questions.
Ms. Jackson, that is absolutely right. And that's why, I talk about the investments in these other areas, because when we don't have secure investments in these other areas or networks built up, then you have these failures. And let's be honest, over the last several years, and when we had, and I was there for this, when we had our former governor, who just decimated the social services safety network, who wanted to, he was one of these folks who believed in small government. And for small government, that typically that means no government. So he, as opposed to passing a budget and signing a budget, he wanted to put all of these restrictions in place. And when we wouldn't go along with the restrictions he wanted to put in place, he figured he would just starve these agencies out. Because what would happen if the agencies, if there's no funding, then the agencies would have to go away. And a lot of these agencies did go away. They went away and they have not come back. And and we are now slowly starting to see that, you know, the impact that the lack of those agencies has created, and it's created these healthcare deserts. And that's why I keep talking about healthcare deserts, because there were services that were prepared at some point at earlier times that are no longer there, because you know, when those networks went away, those services that they provided, they went with them. So you now, if you have the if you have the ability to go, you know, in your local community to get mental health services, then when that provider closed, now you have to go, you know, 20 minutes away from your home. That is a very different experience, or more.
And it gets worse downstate. So
and Tom said, yeah, you're right. I didn't even talk about the downstate experience. I'm just talking about the Chicago Cook County experience, because my district, the 17th district, is the south and southeast sides of the city of Chicago, southern suburbs, and then rural Will and Kankakee County. There are areas in Kankakee County and Will County where they have to travel 45 minutes to an hour for or more for services. Or even if there is a hospital, there are areas in the district that I represent where there's not even a hospital in some areas. They have to travel, you know, across the state border to get health care. We have to invest in these systems if we're going to protect people in their quality of life.
We have, and they closed Tinley Park a couple years ago too, so it did help.
That's right.
Okay, Elizabeth, you have a question for the.
Yeah, actually, I do. I listened to the lady that worked for Cook County Jail as a what do you call it?
Correctional officer.
She's correctional.
Correctional officer. Yeah, because I don't want to call you a turnkey. Okay, as a correctional officer. But I also worked in Division 9, which is max, 11, and 6, and I worked for CPS. And I got news for the people. I want the congressman to know that they have a high school there. And last year we had one. I'm not gonna start crying because every time I talk about, I had to leave Cook County because of that. I mean, I love Sarah. I mean, Consuela B. York. We had a guy that graduated. When he graduated, he had 15 college credits to his good. And I must have forgot where I was, because we had a whole ceremony and their parents came. And then the first thing I was like, okay, what are you going to do in September? And then it suddenly dawned on me that this young man, after he left all of that, and after his parents left, they put his hands behind his back, handcuffed him, and sent him right back upstairs. Because see, I don't see the jail part. I only see the school part. And there are a lot of young men that are there that have not even gone before a judge, that have been sitting there for no less than 12 months. It's 12 months or more. We got a guy that was sitting there for 2 years, and he did not even come. He was just going to court. But he came to he came to Sarah. I keep saying Sarah because I work for I work for a lot of schools. He came to York and he graduated. But what I need to know is that the bill that you're passing that's related to policemen, are they policemen in the Cook County setting? Are they policemen that are in Chicago setting? Or are they policemen that are on the state level? Because Pontiac Correctional Center is a state level, and I've been to Pontiac, and I have a loved one that's at Pontiac that has called me repeatedly, especially when Corona broke out, because the people that were testing positive, they were putting them in general population with the people that weren't positive. And when I made a phone call and I talked to a correctional officer there, she told me, oh no, you made a mistake. Let me call and check. And then she came back about 20 minutes later, and her whole demeanor changed. She said, "You're absolutely right. They are putting people that have tested positive back into the general population." And I told her, I said, "I told you that, and I'm gonna call somebody, and you probably the person that that the Lord has sent me to, because I've been raising hell, because there are people, even though you locked up, you still a human being. Even though you locked up, you still have some kind of rights. And even the correctional officers that work there refuse to wear masks." Am I still on?
Yes.
No, we can still hear you. We can still
Just
hear you.
listen.
That's deep.
Yeah, very deep.
I called my state representative, and I'm putting him on blast, because the only part I keep getting his gatekeeper, and that's Justin Slaughter. I can't even get him on the phone.
All right.
Because I wanted to ask that question. And the only other person that I've called people lawyers downstate, they don't want to touch it. I called somebody here. He's no longer criminal justice. He's on slip and falls, and he's like, "Miss Johnson, if you," and I understand what he's saying. He can't work for free. But somewhere along the line, and what's really hurting, and I told Wanda this, the person did not have a fair trial. That's number one. He never went before a jury of his peers. The lawyer that he had railroaded him. I mean, it's just a damn comedy of errors, and excuse me for cussing. So I'm just trying to figure out, does your bill only address Chicago policemen, state policemen, city policemen, county? Who does it address?
So yeah,
right.
so it addresses all police officers. Now, having said that, the reform is a journey, not a destination. So this is not the last bill that we will pass.
Enjoy the ride.
Well, but this is not the last bill that we will pass. And let me say this also. I don't know the situation with Representative Slaughter, but I can say this to you. I know how hard he worked on this issue. He was my partner on this issue and the passage of this bill. And he and I worked hard. We worked together. He running it through the House, me running it through the Senate. The issues related to correctional officers is an area that there are a number of reforms that we did not take up. There was a question earlier about qualified immunity. So there are a number of issues that we did not take up, and we didn't finalize and finish in this bill, but there are others coming. So for the discussion on correctional officers, be on the lookout for additional bills in that area also.
And I want to tell you, I'm not defaming him, because I worked in, I had the fortunate or misfortunate, depending on how you look at it, of going into private industry, and I worked for a person that did not. I was the gatekeeper. She wanted me to know. She wanted me to find out everything you wanted to talk to her about. So I'm not saying that. So I never could even get to him, because it was during an election year. I know how election years go. But they need something. They need something for people that are coming out of the system.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, I will say this, Ms. Johnson. I took notes, so you can absolutely be assured that I will have a conversation with Representative Slaughter, and I will make sure that he gets this information, and if you message me in the chat and give me your contact information, I will make sure that he has that as well.
Thank
Okay,
you.
and I got one more thing to
Wait
add.
a minute, wait, Wanda. But to that, LG, isn't there somebody that is taking complaints, or isn't the warden or something for each of the prisons involved enough to wait? Well, let me finish my statement. Let me finish my statement. Because LG, doesn't correction has to come before the Senate and answer certain questions? So isn't that a question that can be brought to the corrections director or something?
Absolutely, and that's why I want Ms. Johnson to give me her contact information, because I
Wanda, make
know.
sure you get her stuff.
I will.
I know that I talked to Director Jeffries, Rob Jeffries of the Department of Corrections, and I, I know this is an area that he has been working on, particularly as it related to the placing of COVID positive prisoners outside of segmented units into general population. So this is an area that I want to make sure that we stay on and we stay on top of. And I also saw that Earl Bell, who's with me and with my office, he also dropped his contact information into the chat also.
Okay.
So you need to, and he dropped and my email address as well. So you need to get, if you need to get to us, you have our email address.
Thank you.
And LG, I will poke you from time to time to make sure that we stand on top of those things.
No worry, I know, you know, and for y'all who don't know my and TY's relationship, TY is my big sister, so she will make sure that that these conversations that need to happen will happen.
All right, coming to Miss Lavette Haynes, who's been waiting patiently. I'll come back to you, Jackson. Lavette. Okay, Miss Jackson.
I think Miss Haynes's question basically was about the passage of the bills, and as I mentioned, the governor now has the bills on his desk, and I expect she now has all of them, because originally he had education and criminal justice, and then subsequently he got economic opportunities, healthcare. Healthcare did not pass the General Assembly. So I expect that when we go back, we will pass healthcare. So he now has criminal justice, education, and economics, and I expect him to sign them all.
All right, then we have.
I got a question. I got one more question. How does this project protect people? Wait. How will ending bail change the criminal justice system in Illinois?
Ooh, I'm so glad you asked that question. The money bond system, in my opinion, is a tax on poor people.
Yeah.
Because if you have a wealthy person or a person with resources who's guilty, they can afford to get out. But if you have an innocent person who does not have access to resources, they must sit in county jail. And I also would remind everyone on this call that when you sit in county jail, you have not been convicted of a crime.
No.
Say that again. When you're sitting in county jail, you have not been convicted of a crime. You are not bailed out because A, you couldn't make the bail, or B, you couldn't afford the bail, or C, there were conditions that say you were a threat to the community or to public safety or a flight risk, and you're not going to get let out. So those are the only reasons you sit in a county jail. Now that is very different than sitting in a state correctional facility. When you sit in a state correctional facility, you have been found guilty.
Yes, right.
You have been found guilty of a crime. But when you sit in a county jail, in one of the 102 county jails across the state of Illinois, you have not been convicted of a crime. So that is important. And as Thomas mentioned, the question, when you have access, if you don't have access to cash, and that is the only thing standing between you and the ability to go home, is your access to cash, the size of your bank account.
Yep.
Then that is not justice. Justice comes when you hold someone and you incapacitate someone because they are a threat to safety, someone's safety, or the public safety, or you are a threat to run, so not appear in court. That's what bail is supposed to be there for. So what this bill allows for, it allows for the judge to take money off the table. If you come to the courtroom and you have been found and you are charged with a violent crime, the judge can hold you in custody. But as we talked about that young lady earlier, if you come to a courtroom and clearly you need services, the judge, before you even get to the court, before you even get in the Cook County Jail, or you even get in the DuPage County or Winnebago County Jail, the judge can say, you know what? this person and the interest of justice would be better served by placing this person into treatment, getting this person the help that they need because they are housing insecure or they're economically insecure or they have a healthcare challenge. Addressing all of those items is what will help. That's what helps public safety. When I say reimagine public safety, that's what I mean. We, for far too long, we have spent time. Somebody is accused of a crime, and we say, you know what? This is a crime where you're bad. We're gonna throw the book at you. So we're gonna charge you with this crime, and you go away, and we're gonna lock the key. We're gonna lock you up, and that's somehow gonna make us safe. That does not make us safe. Right. What makes us safe is thinking about what are the underlying issues that exist that will help us address the challenges that we face. Yeah. Is this a challenge of you not having access to an economic opportunity? Okay, can we put you into a program where there's a job placement opportunity where a company or an organization or an entity would find you access to an economic opportunity? Is this an area where you need mental health or substance abuse treatment? If there's an issue where you need to be back in school, whatever those things are, that's how we are asking the tough questions, not just about whether or not this person who is in front of me what they're charged with, because every individual case is different. Yes. Because what frustrates me is when we try to apply this formulaic system of justice where you're charged with this and I'm gonna put you here, as opposed to understanding what the person's circumstances are and making sure that we recognize the totality of the individual circumstances. So that's what we have to move our system of justice to, where we are examining the totality of the circumstances and applying and creating a system of justice that gives everybody equal opportunities.
Well, we also have to look at our judges too, LG. If our judges aren't the type of judges that we need in our community, then we don't need to be electing them anymore.
No question. And saying that is another discussion that we must have, and elections have consequences. And yes. I know this is I'm trying. I don't want to get too political on this call, but elections absolutely have consequences, and we have to. And when I know that I hear too oftentimes that individuals, when they get to the end of the ballot and they see all of the judges and they say, well, I'm tired, I'm gonna walk out, or I'm just gonna select everybody, I'm just gonna, as opposed to educating yourself about, we need to educate ourselves about the entire ballot, up and down the ballot. That's so right. Folks who have let me finish. Okay. So folks who have, we need to understand people's record, and we need to understand, the relationship they have to communities, and that happens. That has to happen up and down the ballot.
That's right. And LG, I agree with you, and so I'm going to put that charge on the Black Caucus itself to ensure that for the next 10 years, that's one of the missions that is happening, is that you all are telling our communities which judges we should not be voting for.
Well, and that's why I'm gonna come back and see why that's what I say. I don't want to mix our legislative and our political. But that's a discussion that because I don't want to get nobody in trouble, including myself. So I want to separate the election and the political.
We got do need this program is to educate people and to share, and that is one of the things we do need to educate our community about is our judges. If we don't know who's judging us, then we leave ourselves open again. And so it's important that we know who's judging us in our communities. If we have insensitive judges passing sentences that are harming us, then we'll continue to lose this fight. So across the board, we need some fairness, some holistic love, and some different alternative approaches, because locking them up is not the answer.
No, it isn't.
Well, and Thomas, say I would let me piggyback on this one for just 1 second, Ms. Carter, if I might. What I would ask, and I will pose this back to the group and for all of us, when those discussions, now I know that, and for my office, we do a lot of town hall meetings and meetings and outreach meetings. When those happen, when those notices come out to folks, please don't just send those to spam or ignore them. Attend them, because in some of those areas, when we can have the discussion that we're talking about right now, we will have those open discussions. Please come. I would invite anybody to come to those discussions when we have them, because we will have them. But we need folks to come and participate. The beautiful thing about if there is an upside to the coronavirus and us being able to stay at home and work remotely, etc., it is the fact that we have now become accustomed to this environment.
Yeah.
This has become, while it's not normal, it has become more usual to us. More it's become more usual. So when these kind of meetings happen, please participate. That's all I would ask. Please.
You have 3 speakers that would like to ask you a question. Ms. Jackson first, Naima second, and then TJ.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going back to the bill where it say military equipment. Who is the one calls into the military? So that's one. The other one, I want to go and talk about habitual criminals. Most of our youth are being charged as habitual criminals, not because of what they did at this particular time. It's because a lot of them has taken plea bargains when they were younger, just to get out of jail. Maybe they was there for about 6 months or whatever. So they pleaded guilty and they was not guilty. So just to get out of jail, you have a lot of these public defenders that's telling them, well, you only going to get this, and they come out, or either you got some that did a DUI, and you try to tell them don't take this plea. They put in your DUIs, marijuana charges, and everything else, and compiling that to be habitual criminal, which is unfair. And as far as the bond, I think that sounds good, because a lot of them, like you said, can't afford it. Or either if I'm there because like you said, maybe I was running and hit somebody by accident. Not running in a car. I mean, running, and you know how you can bump into somebody, they fall and hurt themselves. So now you charged with that. So all of this here combined is now you a habitual criminal, because you've been arrested about 5 or 6 times.
Right. Oh.
Let me start with that one, Ms. Jackson, because that is one of the most insidious results of the cash bond system. The fact that these young people sit in jail, and they have not been found guilty yet. But people sit in jail, and to go home, they'll take that plea bargain. Just so I just want to go home. I want to go home. I need to get out of here. So I'll take any plea. I'll take a plea bargain, any plea bargain, whatever it is. And that is one of the most insidious parts of the cash bail system, because it makes someone, it's akin to someone having to buy their freedom back. And that is not justice. That's not justice. And I don't care what anybody says. That you cannot only say that access to money is going to make our community safe, because that's not the case.
That's right.
It has led to. That's why you find over 90% of cases end in plea bargain, because people just want to go home. So that is to me the most insidious part of that. So one of the things that we have tried, we changed in the bill. You cannot under House Bill 3653, the way we've changed the habitual criminal statute, there is no reason in my mind why you should be and for those who don't know what the habitual criminal statute is, it says that it's basically 3 strikes and you're out.
Right.
We don't go as far as life in some cases. You can get a Class X felony, which can be 25 to life. Yeah. So what we changed the statute to say before you can get a class X as a habitual criminal, you have to have had a violent felony. So we have individuals who got that ramp up. They might have committed, as you mentioned, they might have a DUI on their record and a retail theft. So if you got a retail theft and a DUI on your record, and then you get a third, and your third could just be another retail theft. You could be then charged as a habitual criminal and then get a class X felony and be sentenced to 25 to life. When you have not yet committed a violent or forcible felony. So what we did was we changed it to say it has, in order to be charged as a habitual criminal, those underlying felonies had to have been that third one. Before you get to that third one, those other ones had to have been a forcible felony, something that's violent. So you can't be a habitual criminal if you be sentenced without being violent. That just does not make sense. So that's an area where we thought, from a policy perspective, from a justice perspective, it makes sense for us to, if we are going to put those kinds of investments and those kinds of punishments into individuals, it can't be just people that we're mad at. It's got to be people who are a threat to public safety.
All right, Naima, ask your question.
Well, first, I want to say thank you so much for being with us and sharing this knowledge.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'd like to know, is there a website that we can go to that gives us a listing of legislation that is being proposed or that has passed that's relevant to criminal justice and this particular area, whether it's the habitual criminals, posting bail, is there a site that we can go to see existing legislation and proposed legislation? And the second question is there a website that gives us the records of the judges that are currently serving, what type of decisions that they made, so that we can research and determine which judges deserve to be reelected? Do you have website information on those things?
So I am dropping into the chat a couple of websites for you. So the first is hb3653.org. House Bill 3653.org is it's the website that has information about the criminal justice reform bill. So it will give you individuals who support the bill. For instance, you have domestic violence victim supporters, victim survivor supporters, crime victim survivor supporters. You have various advocacy groups. That all those individuals are there. Information about the bill, you can find all of that in that bill or in that website. Then I also gave you another website which is called ilga.gov.
Correct.
It is a history of all the legislative work that we do. So you can see every bill that I have introduced, every bill any member of the General Assembly has introduced. You can watch committee hearings. You can weigh in on bills. You can file witness slips. And there was a question earlier about what can we do. That is one of the things I would request and ask for and plead from this group for participation in those types of deliberations. So when we present bills on the floor, for instance, when I initially proposed the precursor to House Bill 3653, which was House Bill 163, there were over 20,000 opponents to this bill. So the law enforcement community, they galvanized. They flooded the website. They flooded these witness slips. But then, to that point, there were also, I think there were 8,000 individuals who registered in support of the bill. So as we reached out and showed that there were people who wanted this bill, and they engaged also. So that's why I give that ilga.gov website, because you can follow along. Yeah, you can follow along with everything. And as we are having testimony, you can watch, you can listen to committee, you can watch floor debate. I would ask, if there is an issue you can even, I could give you a tutorial, but there is a way for you to even follow, and you can identify bills that are criminal law based bills, and you can just track those. There are bills that are just healthcare. You can just track those, and you can just watch them through the process, and then weigh in on them as we're debating them in Springfield. So I would ask everybody on this call to get acquainted with the ilga.gov website and help us, because as we are as members of the Black Caucus go and introduce bills, or there are members or other progressive members who are allies introduce bills, we need to support those bills, because there are those who are the opponents to reform. They are going to their supporters are going to come out in mass.
Yes.
We need to do the same thing. We need to do the absolute same thing.
Senator
Rhonda?
Yes.
Thank you.
We're almost at 7 o'clock, so you want to say the thank yous to everybody?
Yes.
I want to make sure I get through the questions. I don't want to leave anybody without questions.
We got three more hands up. So
all right.
We have Ms. Stewart.
I know I do have.
What about me?
7 o'clock, but I want to make sure I get through all those questions. So please.
Thank you, LG, for being so kind to extend your time with us. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Next question.
Ms. Stewart.
Okay, I had a question in regards, going back to the bill where you were looking to remove the habitual criminals for nonviolent. My only pushback to that is that what about those who are business owners and things like that who do experience people consistently doing it? Is there a way where it can be adjusted? Not saying in this bill, but in general, that if it's a non-violent habitual criminal, then the charges are dropped, and that because essentially they're still a habitual criminal if they're still robbing people. In a way, it's kind of handicapping the fact that they are just not doing anything violent.
The habitual criminal statute applies to felonies. It doesn't apply. It's not a misdemeanor. Not a misdemeanor case. So if you have a situation where if the charge does not rise to the level of a felony, then and right now, for instance, you mentioned business owners. In Illinois has one of the lowest felony retail theft thresholds in the country. So if you steal products of $300 or more, you just committed a felony. So if a teenager if somebody goes into Best Buy and steals an iPhone, they just committed a felony. And that's $300. That's two pairs of Jordans. It could be one pair of Jordans in some instances. So I understand the challenge, and that's something that we certainly, I'm open to working with business owners, because that's not something that we don't want to hamper business owners, but we also still have to recognize that there are underlying conditions which exist that we must address if we're going to have public safety in our communities.
All right, Ms. Levesque.
Can I?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I say something, please?
Sure. Yes, Ms. Sanders.
Okay. I'm sorry I was late for this. And I'm not going to have time to say to you, LG, all the things that I would like to talk about. I actually have an additional set of proposed criminal justice reforms that I'd like to talk to you about outside of this meeting. I have a group. Some of the people are on this call today, like Carolyn and Wanda and Nasi. So there have been some others. And some of the things that we want to get into are community policing, ending private prisons, and I'm looking at a number of other reforms. You all did a phenomenal job. I'm giving you credit for that. I do have somewhat of a legislative background in some of the work I've done, so everything that we're talking about here, I'm familiar with processes, and so I do want to talk to you about getting sponsors. I know a couple of people actually in the House personally, like LaShawn Ford and a couple of other folks there. And I want to talk to you about these additional proposed reforms and see about getting sponsors for those going forward. I know how much effort it went into getting these things passed, these reforms passed, and I know of the kind of pushback that you all got, and still getting pushback because there are a lot of folks, as we know, who don't want Pritzker to sign that legislation. But anyway, we want to see what else we can get while the environment is hot, because that's where we are right now. We know this is the right time to try to get more reforms pushed through, in my opinion. So you can, give me your thought about that.
Absolutely. Well, that's why I mentioned, reform is absolutely a journey, and we are not going to stop with this bill. I have the honor and privilege of, in my career, having sponsored several pieces of legislation now that I think are making a measurable difference in the quality of public safety in this across this state. First, in 2015, with then State Senator, now Attorney General Kwame Raoul, he and I sponsored the body camera protocol bill, making Illinois the largest state in the country that allowed for body cameras here in this state. And then in 2017, having passed the Bail Reform Act of 2017, which was the precursor to 3653, because it created that presumption against using cash bail and identified the various crimes that are identified as nonviolent and violent offenses. And now House Bill 3653. So I know that this is not the end of the line for reform. We will continue to fight for it. So Ms. Sanders, for your and everybody else's information, I once again, I don't know if you were on earlier when we put our email addresses in the chat.
I'm looking at them.
I put them back in again, so everybody would have them. So please, if you send me your information or send me questions, etc., I would certainly let's set up some time and figure out how we can talk about those additional items.
Senator, we really enjoyed your discussion this evening. You have addressed so many of our concerns. We thank you, and we will be inviting you back.
Well, it was absolutely my pleasure and my honor to be here. I want to thank you for the invitation. This is the only way, in my opinion, that we are going to be able to dispel some of the myths and the misinformation that is out there about the efforts that we are putting forth, because this is about progress, and this is about making sure that we have a community that everywhere in our communities, all communities have the same opportunities as everybody else. Yeah. So I'm so glad and honored to be with you, that you would even invite me here tonight and let me talk about these issues, because as you can tell, I'm extremely passionate about them. This is an area that when I leave the General Assembly, I want to be able to say that the legacy that I have left is one that creates a pathway to our communities being uplifted in all ways. So that's been my goal since I stepped into the General Assembly, and it'll be my goal while I stay in the General Assembly. So I just want to thank you for having me this evening. It's been an absolute honor and privilege.
Thank you for coming, and
thank you, LG. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Everybody have a good night, and we'll see you again next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Have a great evening.
Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Bye-bye.